Yeah, maybe a quick word of introduction about me and Yayloh. So I'm Sophie. I'm also the co-founder of Yayloh. My co-founder is also somewhere here in the room. Tall, bald Indian guy. You will not miss it. Miss him. And Yayloh is a return management platform specifically designed for global fashion brands. And we work with Macade and Jeanerica here and other brands in the Nordics, but also other countries in Europe. And today I have the pleasure to moderate the panel, so I will try not to speak too much, but let them talk. And we're going to talk logistics, cross-border returns and shipping, multi-currency transaction, operation, and all the tricky stuff which comes with taking a brand global. And we actually have got amazing panelists with us today who have been on the trenches, really dealing with that firsthand, from setting up warehouse in the overseas, handling the headaches of cross-border returns, managing multi-currency transactions, and they will be sharing real stories, tips, their challenges for you tonight. And we also have Ruben, CFO at Juni, who will contribute by sharing how to optimize these multi-currency transactions, all the cash flows, and also will uncover hidden ways to improve the bottom line. And before jumping in, maybe I will ask you all three to give just a quick word of introduction. You want to start, Jakob?
Yes, my name is Jakob Lindqvist, and I'm the e-commerce manager at Jeanerica. I've been working in the fashion and e-commerce industry for 15 years now almost, and super excited to be here and talk a little bit about returns and return rates, so everyone else here can have a little less angst if you have high return rates. More to come.
Yeah, my name is Peder Gulliksson. I work as the brand manager at Macade. I've been working with Macade since the start, so I've been working with everything from the logistics to the customer service to e-commerce manager, and now I'm the brand manager at Macade. Yeah.
And I'm Ruben Arnbert. I'm the CFO at Juni, with a background in banking, but also advisory for this type of international expansion.
Maybe just to set the stage before we start the questions, would you mind sharing some numbers about your sales, almost outside of Sweden, just like the audience knows a little bit more, a percentage of any data you can share?
I mean, we are Macade, and we are actually and have always been highly focused on the US market. So America stands for about 50% of our turnover. Sweden is 5%. So we've always been heavily invested into the North American market. Europe stands for about, what would that be, 35-40%. And then we have Canada and the US as our biggest markets.
And for us, we started seeing real growth in the US 2-3 years back. And on the e-commerce side, it's now our biggest market, just a little bit bigger than Sweden. So it stands for roughly 35% of our turnover online.
Okay. Good. And maybe to start with, Peder, in terms of logistics, what have been your biggest logistical challenges when expanding globally?
Yeah, I mean, we first had our warehouse here in Sweden. And
in Sveavägen.
On Sveavägen, in central Stockholm, but since the start, we were always focused on the US market. So now I think it was 2 years ago, now 1.5 years ago, we took the step over to the US as well and set up a warehouse over there. It's a 3PL, so it's a partnership, but that was a big step for us. And with that came a lot of challenges, especially with having inventory available on the site, current collections and previous collections, and then also trying to open up a new warehouse and determine how much of the current inventory should we allocate to the US warehouse, how much should we keep in Sweden. So the setup that we have now is that we have a Swedish warehouse covering the European market, and then we have a US warehouse covering the American market. But we will also, as US is our main market, we want to have visibility from both warehouses to our American customers. So
and how did you solve that?
It was a bit tricky, but we have a good platform, Shopify, that we're working on, Shopify Plus, and we are relying on their order routing function regarding that. So the US customers can see and purchase from both warehouses with priority levels on the US warehouse, of course. So as much as possible it gets shipped from the US warehouse. And then if a customer wants to buy something from an older collection or that it's out of stock in the US warehouse, that order gets routed to the Swedish warehouse.
Okay, that's natively in Shopify.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe can you share a little bit about how did you find the 3PL in the US? Because I think that might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's research, I guess. Just Google is a friend. And just talking around and picking up the phone and calling other companies and asked how they've solved it. Yeah, that's probably how I went about doing that.
Yeah, and I think you also shared when we prepped like that ultimately it was quite a small 3PL and that was also good for your needs. Maybe you can...
Yeah, correct. So we got a good contact at a 3PL that I liked, and one thing that I found good about it was that it was quite a small one. They didn't have that much other brands. They felt pretty tech savvy, and our contact was the CEO or the founder of that 3PL as well. So yeah, we were talking to the decision maker straight away, which I felt was beneficial and has been working good since.
Yeah, no, I think it was an interesting story that you shared. In terms of more like delivery experience, like how did you, what strategy did you implement to ensure that they would have like a great delivery experience? And that's also a question for you then, Jakob, as well.
Testing, of course, but also talking to your customers. I know that we did send follow-up emails and contacted customers and asked them how they experienced the delivery. One thing that I've learned is that we need to be market native, or what you say, that you may make sure that you are using services that are common in that market that you're selling to. I often find myself in both marketing and the delivery experience that you need to find something that your customer is used to.
Yeah, because in the US I remember you changed a few times shipping carriers.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean here in Europe we use mainly DHL and Express, but if you do that to an American customer, they don't really recognize that brand. So of course we use UPS and FedEx. Has been working really good for us.
What about you, Jakob?
I mean, for me, first of all, I'm super envious of having a warehouse over the US when your large market is US. No, for us, it's as a smaller company. We only have one 3PL, which is located down in Borås. And given what we are selling, which is premium denim for $250, a cost of doing business is just having as quick of deliveries as you can. Compared to you guys, we are also like a classic fashion brand, so 2/3 are wholesale and 1/3 is e-com, and we have a lot of wholesale clients in the US, which means that as a brand you're also competing. Should I buy it from us, or should I buy it from a US e-commerce player who might even offer next day delivery? So I think a blunt truth, especially if you're selling more expensive items, is that you need to prioritize speed to have the customers to be satisfied and to be able to compete. And you unfortunately also, especially if you're selling more expensive items, you need to offer free shipping. We did some tests when I started. I just set out, contacted our best customers, asked if I could have, we're super happy to have a customer. Can I have a quick chat, know a little bit more about you? And even though it's super anecdotal, I talked to maybe 20 people, you quite quickly realize okay, with this US type of customers, I think you could almost see when I saw their background in Zoom that, okay, these are quite affluent customers I have, that it was clear that they're okay, service is speed when it comes to e-commerce of deliveries.
Okay, so which shipping carrier do you use and how many did you ship to US?
We do UPS, so we both offer standard and express. So a little bit depending if it's East Coast, West Coast, it can be there in a couple of days at its quickest.
When we talk about shipping and all these shipping carriers, and we also had a lot of conversation about the cross-border returns, obviously, which comes as a challenge when it comes to both customer experience and also cost for you as a brand. So what was your main challenge and how did you tackle these?
For me, it was quite interesting when I started that with the US being the biggest market. And if I have anyone in here in the room who is using UPS and does returns, it was just like commercial invoices for the customers. Every customer in the US who returns back to Sweden needs to fill out a commercial invoice, print 2 copies, paste one on the outside, one inside of the box, and then send it back. It's just like a horrendous customer experience. And it was super manual. In the beginning when I came, we had a system of, contact us, we'll fill it out, send it back to them. They had to wait. It was just like such a bad experience. And when I checked my customer service, we realized that, a fifth of our time was spent just like handling commercial invoices. And it's one of those things that, it just needs to be fixed. There's nothing that a customer appreciates that you're helping them by having to wait hours in order for you to fill out and send a commercial invoice. So I think that was a really big hurdle, because especially if you have sort of, you sell denim, it's very high return rates. And if kind of the first experience is that, I tried on these pair of jeans, they didn't quite fit, and it's just like a super hassle returning, the chances of them coming back is quite slim. So that was a very big challenge for us.
Yeah, and working with UPS is also limited compared to we had a chat regarding DHL or FedEx, where we can do a little bit more things with paperless, which is not yet available with UPS. Hopefully they will come to it. I saw you nodding, Peter, so I guess you're related to...
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that as well. We used DHL mainly for returns in the beginning as well as well as outbound. And when they have paperless returns, it was really, really beneficial for us as well, especially for the customer journey, for sure. But now when we have our US warehouse, then the returns are much easier and hassle-free.
I think it's also a question of balance, and we had a good chat about the balance between the cost of both shipping, because you offer free shipping because you think it's a service, and then also the cost of returns and even exchanges in your case, versus the customer satisfaction. So when you look at logistic from a cost perspective and then customer satisfaction, how you usually take these decisions, which service you use and what cost do you bear, or do you actually ask the customer to pay for?
I mean, it's a great question and a hard one, but I think we always try to put our customers first, and that we, I mean, if we look at if we try to look long term as well with the customer lifetime value of a customer, and the amount of time and money that we spend to convince a customer to purchase from us. Then we don't want to make that a bad experience when they just have made a wrong choice in what they purchased, or if they want to exchange for another size. So we always offer free returns, I'd say, and try to make sure that the purchase for the customer is as smooth as possible, so we can see the long term and have a customer that continues to buy from us.
But you also have repeated clients, repeated customers, and a high average order value.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's going to be so much harder if your average order value is low. I think ours is 1,700 SEK, 1,800. So that gives us a little bit of room regarding the returns, I'd say.
And I mean, for me, when I look at the costs when it comes to returns, is that basically my model for customer acquisition cost includes the return costs, and that's kind of how I see it. That being able to, when you're selling such a difficult item, which denim is, you just need to factor that in order to sell it when you're this small. I think rather than having the luxury of maybe optimizing and looking at, okay, how can we shave off a little bit? If you're going into a new market, which requires, costs when it comes to shipping, and when the customers have very high demands as well, you kind of need to start by being very generous and look at that as a customer acquisition cost in the beginning. And hopefully once you get so big that you can start optimizing, but don't do that from the start. I think it's much better to be generous and try to get a feel for the market before becoming overly smart. Also, as you say, it's so much dependent on what you're selling as well. I mean, if you have high enough of an order value, then it's quite motivated. Like that's a possibility to compete and be competitive by having, free shipping and free returns. But in the end of the day, it's a customer acquisition cost, especially in that sort of price range of apparel.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we see actually with our clients. Like depending on the price of the item, like the sensitivity as well to the end customer to return fees is very different. And if you are like in the acquisition phase, then it's relevant to offer like free returns. While if you're established and your clients are quite not super price sensitive, then it doesn't really affect actually their propension to buy again from the brand. So that's maybe something that you will see, in a few years, and work more with retention, like offering exchanges and stock rate, but charging for refunds, for example, to also like protect your bottom line.
Or even experimenting with the pricing to absorb that cost, right? Especially given the target audience that you both have. And like you said, I would expect them to be fairly price insensitive, meaning that part of that cost you could probably pass on in pricing.
Yeah.
And I think it's like really good also if you're operating, if you have a business where you have wholesale partners as well, and like if you're looking at, expanding globally, look at that market, like both on your competitors, obviously, but also like at your own sort of, your own wholesale accounts, like what's their offering, like what are their costs? Maybe you would have an opportunity if it is like, but all of them are charging, but if it is that, the local sort of, especially your local wholesale part that has free shipping, then you're probably just going to have to like, be fine with that. This is what we need to do to be competitive.
Yeah. I was actually about to ask you because, of course, like in the US, the level of service that usually clients are used to is higher than in Europe. So, is that something that you have actually observed, that usually, like even your wholesaler offer free returns and free shipping, and then you have to compete and align with that? Yeah, that's interesting. Cool. I think we can go into the next section, which was about like multi-currency transaction and how you manage that on your store. So maybe you can both start explaining like how your different stores, if you have different stores, like how you manage like the actually multi-currency on your online shop.
We have Shopify Plus as our platform, and we have divided up. So we have a European store and we have an American store. And when we set up the American store, we also created a Macade Golf Inc. or a subsidiary, which then also is the owner of that store, of course. And with that, we got the possibility to use like Shopify US, all of their features, with Shopify audiences and stuff like that, which has been great. And then for multi-currency, we are using Shopify Markets. And right now we're selling to Mexico, we're selling to the US, we're selling to Canada. And those three markets, we are using their local currencies. And the currency transaction happens on an order basis. So when the customer purchases in their currency, the conversion happens instant, like on an order basis. And then we get the base currency is USD, so we get paid in USD, I'd say.
The currency of which you purchase your inventory.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a mismatch with?
I mean, we buy in USD as well. So yeah, so we buy from our manufacturers.
So you have a natural hedge. And
perfect. Yeah, right. And then I mean, the Swedish company is like the mother company, and then we just invoice that back to the Swedish company. And then try to time the currency transaction to when it's good currency, I guess.
No, I guess the reason I ask is because we see this a lot with our customers, that many people consider, should I hedge the currency and lock in a certain FX rate, or just wait and keep fluctuating? And many times it's more of a headache to try and kind of time the market and hedge and find the exact rates than just keep it floating. It's interesting because everyone constantly has that debate of whether, hey, it's now the right time, but nobody can predict the future, right? So then, of course, if you have a very seasonal business and you know that I'm going to make a very large purchase at this point of time in the year, and I've left majority of sales at that point of the year, then yes, it might make sense, but most of the times actually doesn't.
In your case, Jakob, do you face like any challenge with when it comes to multi-currency, or how is that handled in your store?
No, not really. Like I came in a year and a half ago, and we're on Centra, which was obviously, it's like I came from a Shopify background as well, but with Centra, like it's so incredibly easy working with like multi-currencies. So we obviously have currencies for our focus markets, and the same as you, like transaction or exchanges on a transaction basis. And a little bit like as you were talking about, like we obviously, like when we got to the size, when it was like on a board level, sort of a talk about, okay, should we hedge and like how should we do? Because even denim is quite seasonal, as well as like when you have big sales periods. But for us, it kind of was the same thing. We have a lot of costs in Europe. We have production in Turkey. We have expenses in Swedish krona with the salaries. We have, orders coming in from the US, from Europe. So we kind of, it hedges it by itself a little bit. And also one of our board members was just like, no, that's just a way for the banks to make money. So he's like, don't contact your bank. But I think like it is a very good discussion to have though when you come up to a certain size, especially if you are, as you say, a type of brand that is quite seasonal. I think that could be a very important discussion to have.
Oh, exactly, and especially if you have like the Swedish krona, which lately have been super volatile. Right?
Yeah.
So how do your clients in general like work with streamlining the currency effect, or do you have like some best practice to share?
Yeah, no, so we actually, exactly like you're describing, we try and kind of match the cost base versus the revenue. And frankly, if there's there needs to be a very large mismatch for it to make sense, and the type of seasonality that you were mentioning, for it to be worth considering hedging, right? So a vast majority of the time, it just makes more sense to try and either keep a certain pool of currency or try and match cost versus revenue naturally.
Okay, so only super large retailers would actually try to hedge or like sell and buy whenever it makes sense.
And even then, a hedge is not necessarily a guarantee, right? If the exchange rate goes that way, then actually you've missed out, right? So.
And would you have like one of your clients as best practice to share like in how they sort of like master the cash flow and like all the financial operation when going global, like?
No, so one of the very big aspects was trying to maintain as much of the hard currencies, i.e. USD and euros, and not convert that back into Swedish krona. And then obviously if you have a Swedish krona cost base, then try and convert that just as and if you need it, right? Then there are certain ways to look at historic FX rates and determine, okay, this is a good time or a bad time, right? But most of the times it just makes sense to do it as you go.
Okay, so you're doing the right way. Yes. So just maybe like a general advice, like because of your experience now scaling both Macade and Jeanerica abroad, if there was like one tip or something that you would have wished someone told you, like one tip for like taking your brand global, what would it be?
To steal a tagline from another big sportswear brand, I guess it's just do it. I mean, get your fundamentals good. I mean, make sure that you have a good e-commerce partner, that you get your shipping in line, and that you have a good customer service experience and a return rate, and then just focus on the core business and your market, and then there will always be like problems and edge cases that you will need to take action on, but other than that, it's just trial and error. I mean, that's how we've done it, and it's
So even though I've been at Jeanerica I haven't only been here for 1.5 years, I think when it comes to like expanding globally, and I say this from coming from like a premium fashion brand and that sort of category, it's like you won't succeed because of like you're really good at operations, or like, okay, you have amazing like returns management systems, or you're really good at like keeping, say for example, your hedging. Like that's not what's going to make you succeed. That's kind of like the hygiene, like that just needs to be in place. So we were talking earlier, that's kind of like that's the suspension in the car. Like if you're an e-commerce manager, you're almost like a race car driver. Like you have one or two really important things you need to do. In terms of growing globally, I think it so much boils down to marketing. Like you need to have a fantastic product. Can you understand your customer and how to market it? Like that's what you so much need to focus on. And then all the other things around you, they must just work. So I think it's really like important to have your things around you just like working. That's why I love Yayloh. Like I think about my returns so little in the best of ways. Because like for me, where we are in our journey globally is just like, how can we be even better at marketing? Because that's what we need to do in order to grow globally.
Yeah. But I would say like, because us working with you both and like other brands, I was like one thing that we really see with our clients who like manage to like grow and scale is also to keep things simple. And when it comes to operation, because as you say, like you want everything to like just, work, but the more complexity you add, the more problems you actually get. And I think what we saw with working with you both is like you're really good at operations actually, and that is because you have then more time to actually build your brand and work with marketing, and that's because you keep things very like simple, and you also know how to sort of like take shortcuts and like don't think about edge cases, where we see sometimes brands like really focus and struggle on like small edge cases and what about this, and really like think about solving like 98% of the cases. And I think in this, with you both, like you both at Macade and Jeanerica in different ways, that is something that we have observed, and we talk often with Nikhil actually as best-in-class clients. But do you have something to share on your side, Ruben, working with your clients, like in terms of one tip or advice that you would give to a brand who is looking at expanding globally when it comes to?
I think you really hit the nail on the head that, all of that should just work in the background. Like whether it's your returns management, your bank, your financing, your FX, all of that should just work in the background, because like you said, that's not the core objective, right? That is not what will bring 98% of the value, right? But it's crucial in order for that car, or the analogy that you were using, for that to continue running, right? The really, really top brands that we've been working with do exactly that. They're very well, or very good at automating repetitive tasks and operational aspects of their business, and focus like 100% on exactly that brand and marketing and reaching that customer.
And I just like love that word which you both said, at least like for me, how since like we're a small company now, a team of 10 people, is automate. Like so much of what you do around e-commerce, there's so many small little parts that at least traditionally it's like we were talking about earlier, like when you start out and you're doing your own orders, packing. Which is a good experience to have that. I think it's really good to be really down in the trenches, so to speak. But I mean, it's so much about automating these type of things. Of just like shedding away, ensuring that like once again, returns is not something I think about on a daily basis. It just like flows automatically for me and my customer experience colleague.
So you give me a good bridge to the last question, where you have something to talk about AI. Yes, I mean, in terms of like emerging trends and technology, what do you think will actually help e-commerce brands to go global in the next few years? And that's a question to all of you, but I know Jakob has something.
Yeah, I just like got finished a month ago with a big board presentation about what we're doing is supposed to do. No, but like having worked with like marketing e-commerce for almost 15 years now, I just feel like the last couple of years I've been so incredibly inspired in my work, because like with this technology there's just like so many opportunities, like so many things to do. And I think if you're a like SMB e-commerce business, I think we're at like, it's not like it's going to change everything. I feel like it already is, in the sense that I think there was a promise with e-commerce that like, oh yeah, it's going to be, a high margin part of your business. Direct to consumer, like you'll have low cost and like it's like good to scale. But like quite a lot of companies kind of struggled with that, like as you grew, all of a sudden like organizations grew, complexity grew, and like kind of like the promise of being a high margin kind of didn't really work. And I think where we are now with AI in the broadest sense is that like we're at a moment where maybe analogy is kind of like farming was 150 years ago. Like we're going from basically you needed 10 guys on the field with a scythe to like cut the hay, to all of a sudden like you get a harvester. So there's one person like driving a harvester and doing the same work. But the only thing with AI where I feel that analogy like doesn't work is that the harvester back in the days was a major investment. I mean, today if you're using ChatGPT or whatever server it is, AI is just dirt cheap. So I think moving forward, like companies will be able to grow at both quicker and at much better margins than pre-AI. So I think in that sense, it will change a lot in the coming years.
It's interesting because that's also something that we see with some of our clients, that actually ultimately the margins on e-commerce, I mean, it's sometimes harder to actually have a profitable online store than a physical store. Talking about your physical opening sooner.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. What about you, Peder?
I mean, what he said. I guess I don't know how to follow up on that, but you're right. I think my answer is going to be a bit more boring, and that's regarding just global sales. I think the customs being able to sell direct to customers over customer borders is something that needs to be easier, and something that needs to, especially on returns as well. I mean, we've been talking about this here, but it's still a big hurdle to overcome, and that's something that somebody should solve.
Yeah. Do you have something, Ruben?
Yeah, I think two things. So I think AI will automate the boring stuff. I think the real revolution will be on the administrative, repetitive end. So accounting, VAT, a lot of operational processes. I think that's where you will see one of the biggest and enormous changes, and we're already seeing it. And the second one, I think, is that human interaction and customer service, like we talked about, and customer service with a human will carry a bigger premium. I'm not entirely convinced that premium customer service will always be kind of human-led, whereas maybe the simpler kind of tasks will be diverted to AI, but completely AI customer agents, I'm not entirely sure that will be the future.
Agreed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's concluding on AI is very trendy. So but I think that for me, like what we also see with our clients and some of our merchants and you, for example, as Macade, is that when you automate a lot of things, and AI will help you do even more, that a lot of e-commerce team stay very lean, and with that you can actually achieve better profitability. So ultimately, I think that will be also like one of the impact, tying back to what you said on being more profitable, is like having lean teams, super automated operations, and AI customer agent with someone on the line sometimes. But thank you everyone for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the panel discussion, learn a thing or two, and we can go back to the schnapps, I guess.